World famous Supreme Team Show.
That's right.
Our influence went over all stratas of society. Our big brothers went to Harlem Prep and then started spreading this knowledge to different states because they went to college, right? Meanwhile, we, this generation that are the seed fathers of hip hop, we were growing up in a time BLA. Do y'all know what that is?
Black Liberation Army. See,
back when we was growing up, our big brothers, if they didn't have knowledge, they were doing two things. They were Black Liberation Army people, or they were gangsters who moved in silence. John Friedman is a name that some know, many don't. They moved in such silence that a lot of the gangsters, y'all still don't know their name, and they were the inspiration for a lot of young brothers who, in my peer group and in my generation, grew up to become famous, but y'all don't know their names, right? So while we had the Black Liberation Army, because these were the 70s was the time of liberation, we came with how to liberate your mind. Our big brothers in the Black Liberation Army, man, banks was the thing. Back then, that was the move. You hear me? Now, brothers, the trucks, the banks, knocking it off. Because we were tired of being used and abused and treated like cattle. And we was fighting back. But what Allah knew, what was best for the babies, was that we get the knowledge so that we could raise our mentally dead brothers and sisters from their state of unawareness. So that's what we excelled at. We were so good at that even the teachers that in the classrooms that we disrupted, because we stopped lying. Christopher Columbus ain't stuck in the world, and stop lying, man. Okay? We would tell the truth and shame the devil. We were so proficient with this knowledge that you got to give us credit, because when we would encounter the local preacher and ask him, come on, man, why you gotta picture some blonde hair, blue-eyed Jesus in that church? And you know, come on, man, stop lying to our mothers and grandmothers, man. That's, if you really think about the era where the pictures of the white Jesus came down and the pictures of the black Jesus went up. Put some respect on our name. We did that. Don't play with us. We did that. We brought about so much change that we became targets. See, and this is the part that y'all missing, and this is probably why they told you, Chuck. Did they tell you, Chuck? Don't mention them gods. Whatever you do, we're gonna let you talk about hip hop. You can't mention
this money, but you can't talk about the nation.
You can't talk about the gods. See, and the reason why they didn't want you to talk about the gods, because the gods talked about the God and the devil. Here we go. Here we go. Look what happened to your man, Professor Griff. Right? Anytime the black man becomes conscious and is able to identify the evil that lives to destroy the evil that lives to destroy him in his present time is the same evil that destroyed his ancestors in the past for the past 400 years, and you are able now to vocalize and identify that evil that lives and point your finger at him, because remember, the greatest trick that the devil pulled was convincing the world that he didn't exist. I say the other greatest trick that he pulled was convincing the world that God was in the sky and that the devil was in the ground and he was red and not white. That was a lie. Because he always knew you was the black God. That's why he kidnapped us from the best part, brought us here to the poor part, and we made this poor part of the planet Earth the most richest, most powerful part of the planet. We did the work, he just whipped our ass while we did it. Did you hear what I said, man? We were not slaves when he captured us. We were architects, we were builders, we were people who understood the rich soil of the planet, who could plant and nurture and grow and develop the land so that it could benefit the people. That's who we were. Because when they came and they saw the best part of the planet Earth and they looked at our entire continent, they know these people special. But the problem was, we were especially good.
Still raping that country.
Now, let's be really clear what that means. We were so good that we gave him an opportunity to come amongst us and do trading. And once he came amongst us and did trading, and what he began to do was to get our natural resources and then trade and give us lies and deceit. And then he became bold. Because as he practiced his lies and deceit, right, he then instituted his trick knowledge, where then he kind of got some of our brothers to agree to turn against their own brothers and sisters on the continent.
The trader made it into orientation.
Which becomes the interorientation that leads to the enslavement of a nation and people. But, like I said, we, the true and living gods, right, who became those who know who the true living God is and teach that the true living God is the Son of Man, supreme being, black man from Asia, who walked the streets of Harlem, whose righteous and proper name is Allah. What we were able to do was we was able to recognize God when he presented himself to us, right? And we were able to recognize the devil that he pointed out to us. But you know, the most unique thing about Allah was that he wasn't anti-black, neither was he pro-black. He wasn't anti-white, neither was he pro-black. And so even the revolutionary-minded people like the Mau of that time, they were kind of intrigued by Allah's approach. But Allah's approach was first and foremost was to do no harm to the babies that he was raising up in the consciousness, because he didn't want to raise our consciousness for us to be mowed down. Because he knew that the people who are the evil that lives, they practice murder. They taught him how to kill when he went to the Korean War. So Allah knew the power of life and death. He had sons before he left. But when he came back and he went into that temple, he was fresh out of the Korean War. And he knew the power of life and death. And he understood that the scales never tip just, you know, it's not balanced. They're going to tip one way or the other. So when he discovered within the temple how to take the knowledge and reverse the polarity to put one back in first place, because he was the one. The one stands alone. It was the first degree, the original man. Every other one after that described another mentality of man. See, a lot of y'all don't understand that when we were saying the 85%, we understood because that's the pool that Allah pulled from. That's what we were. Unless we was, you understand what I'm saying? Because when Allah came, he had we was the uncivilized people, the poison animal eaters. We were literally slaves from a mental death and power. We were people who did not know who the true living God was. Neither did we know our origin in this world. All we know is that we were here in the wilderness of North America, and that as far as back as we could remember, our foreparents were slaves to a bunch of white people.
Worship what they know now.
You understand? And they was worshiping some blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy, right? That the white man, who was our slave maker, said was the Son of God. And then logically, because even though we were mentally dead, we said, but damn, if the Son of God is blonde hair and blue eyed, his father got to be the same. He don't look nothing like us anyway. However you add that up. So the conceptual analysis, right, of a youth movement growing and developing into consciousness began to develop a sense of ownership of black consciousness, black awareness, which then leads to the black man standing up on his square saying, no more will I be used and abused.
The revelation of God.
And at the end of the day, all of y'all learned from us. whether you remain to 85%, and I get it. There's a show called 85 South now where these brothers proudly put, I'm an 85%er.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Without even understanding that that's the 14th degree in the 1 to 40. You understand? And I just quoted it for you because those are the people, you know what I'm saying, that done went back to sleep.
Easy led in the wrong direction, but hard to be led in the right direction. At the end of the day,
the world famous Supreme Team show, right? You know, was part of that, was the early part, right? Because from a change in consciousness comes a change in your walk, a change in your talk, a change in your music. Because our culture is your customs, your mores, your practices, and your principles. See, a culture is not music, graffiti, right? That's what you conglomerated all that and said that's what hip hop culture is. But we was the culture that reigned supreme. We was the culture of our God, the culture of ourself, Lord of Law, Master, and y'all, come on, man, y'all knew this. So at the end of the day, my point is that when hip hop came, it became transmitted through sound accompanied by music. And people, especially the evil people that lives, they were getting afraid that we had too much power. Because if there's a song that plays, whether it was on the underground radio stations or whether hip hop had been commercialized yet or not, the underground hip hop that was taking place in all the parks and all of that, there was a message in the music. You know, one of the most profound songs that the gods made famous is called "Love Is the Message," right? It didn't have its own lyrics, but we put our own lyrics to it. We said, "Study your lessons, cause the black man is God. Study your lessons, cause the black man is to be God. Allah, you live." You see what I'm saying?
You always have it, always will.
You see what I'm saying? So even then, right, we were taking songs and putting the knowledge into those songs. And y'all know this, man.
Born King, I just didn't want to cut you short, but I had to just throw it in there because you went to something that was really a supreme foundation to hip hop. And that's the God's show that was up on Youth and Action.
That's what, was it WBAI?
It might have been
WBAI.
Right. And they was in Brooklyn Tech. The show was done from Brooklyn Tech. Cee-Divine, the Mastermind, and Just the Law, the Superstar. Buffalo Girl goes around the outside, and the world famous Supreme Team show where they first started to deal with our enlightener, our national anthem. Okay? Now, them brothers at that time, we were doing what we was doing, and Cee-Divine came along, and we had a group. And I'm going to show you, that's why I said I've been putting little bits and pieces, but I got so much content, you know, knowledge is infinite. And that's how it could go down. But anyway, during that time, you had a record that came out. The Duke of Rap, right? Not only did he put that record out, you know what I'm saying? Also shout out to my brother C.R.I.M.E and Divine Force. But also during that time, Cee-Divine came around and we created a group called the Sheriffs of Rap. They had one song that came out, and it was right behind Daha, you know. And the group consists of my man Igar, Shamel, and another brother, you know, that wasn't righteous, but you know, he was honorary, named Rock. You know? So we've been doing this. But them brothers with Youth in Action, the world famous Supreme Team show, they used to mix Love Is the Message like crazy, is a foundation to hip hop. Go on, bro.
And that's the truth, man. And y'all know that this is the truth. But for those of y'all who don't know, now you know. Because we make the unknown known, right? Because we don't listen, man. We don't trade our integrity for dollars, right? And let me just be real clear. I respect you, Chuck D, and I really, really, really like you. But by you erasing the history of the gods, I'm a little bit ashamed of you, man, because you know better. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, man, you can't erase the foundational footprint. You know what I'm saying? Because our footprints is in the sand. Our history is written in stone, man. You can't change it. At the end of the day, right? Some of the most prolific rappers were rappers when they were still youth. Look at Big Daddy Kane. Big Daddy Kane. What?
King Asiatic, no one.
And everybody knew that that's who he was. When I just watched Jay-Z run into Rakim at the Grammys. Peace, God. You know what I'm saying? Peace, I'm into the God, they home. And it was real love. When you talk about Marcy Projects, you know, with Jay and them, come on, man. You talking about
Supreme,
the
you should go to civilization classes in there.
Hey, listen.
So everybody
know the gods.
Jehovah.
How did you not know? Were you that sheltered? Did your liver shelter? No, you didn't. Stop playing. Stop playing. So here go the point, right? So when hip hop began and y'all started integrating the God's language, the God's mannerisms, because the way we would be kicking it on them corners, it was like we was rapping.
That's where the cipher comes from.
And so we would be in the cipher. Y'all took that name and act like you own it. Now, no, that's us. Because the cipher, that's infinity. Because our mathematics supreme was 1 to 9 in the cipher. The cipher was there to show there's no beginning or ending to this. Right? But when we stood in our cipher and we stood on our square in that cipher, we was building. And when we built, it was such self-styled wisdom. I could see how rap could come out of that. Because, man, some of us, like, I promise you, some of us, when we built, we had that kind of self-styled wisdom where it seemed like we didn't even breathe. That we could just build. And you would actually learn something. And let me say this, right? 5% is of doctors, lawyers, engineers, bus drivers, train drivers, owners of companies. They're in the music industry.
A woman nurse.
You know what I'm saying? They're nurses, doctors, they're doulas, everything, right? Today. But back then, we was the predominant youth movement, right? I could tell y'all a true story. And you can ask Billy. 118 Park, North Side, Queens. Huh?
Give it to him.
Listen to me. I taught Bimmy his alphabets. Yeah, out the way we teach it. Yeah, I'll never forget Bimmy. I remember when I ran back into him years later after he, you know what I'm saying, blew up and all that. Yeah, he remembered. You could ask him. Because he's going to tell you the truth. Because the truth is what's real.
And that's why I came at him, Braun King, when he was talking about the gods that time and trying to act like the only thing that he knew about the gods was relating to the Supreme Team was drugs, and he knew about knowledge way before that.
But at the end of the day, when you look at, the Supreme Team was a youth movement, right? Of gods, but they chose a different economic path. Conditions requiring independent means of economics is an acronym for crime. What is crime? Crime are conditions requiring independent means of economics. When you come from a community that has had all the jobs, all the resources, all of the dollars for good education sucked up out of it, and someone is flooding that community with drugs, we ain't got no airplanes. We don't got coca leaves. We didn't. Where'd the dope come from? Where'd the heroin come from? Huh? However, at the end of the day, that team alone, right, showed you the power of the gods, even though they chose that path that we don't really walk, right? They were one of the most powerful teams, but they didn't get there by themselves because, like I told y'all earlier, right? In the era that the gods was predominant, gangsters moved in silence. The BLM did their economical thing with the banks and the armored cars. And the young were not even allowed in the hustle game yet.
True to that.
Now, because the gangsters moved in silence and there was a code of conduct and a code of ethics, right? So you had to reach a certain degree of physical age in order to get a package, right?
Sure.
Now, I could tell y'all some stories, right?
Tell them.
Right? I could tell you stories about how I ran the number spot as a youth, that I was one of the first youth put on by a real family. And I ain't gonna I'm not gonna say.
I said it.
I know you said it. I'm not gonna say it because, like I said, he moved in silence. And until he comes forth and tells his story, I'm not gonna tell his story for him. I'm not gonna mention his name. You know? 4 blocks around the corner from me, LL Cool J grew up. The show place on Farmers Boulevard. Let me tell y'all something, man.
Mr. Ugly.
Let me tell y'all something, man. You know,
Grand Grove.
when we talk about the influence of the gods on hip hop, all you gotta do is listen to Russell Simmons. Russell Simmons tell you in his book that the flyest guys in the neighborhood was the 5%. Read his book. Because Hollis Queens influenced Too Big, Too Bar, what's Lamatique? Latique, not Lamatique. Lamatique is Long Island. Chuck, Lamatique, young brother, but he younger than you, so maybe you know him. But what I'm saying to you is that that's how hip hop began to change, right? Because Russell Simmons had an earlier running with the gods. Because in 71, when we came to the desert, right, before we had our first show Improve, Russell Simmons was the person who hung up the coats. But we didn't know, and we didn't want to let him in, and the gods was about to put hands on him. He said, no, let him in. He's the guy that checks the codes. And all of the things that we saying to you can be verified because what I said, I meant. We the seed fathers for hip hop, but we the seed fathers for the righteous hip hop, my man, and that's the difference.
I meant to say they were the dance masters from Brownsville. That's the CeeLo 456. You know what I'm saying? Van Dyke in the hole.
Now, when I say righteous hip hop, what let me just be more clear. We didn't use the N-word. We didn't call each other dogs. We didn't call our women the female dog word that starts with a B. It was none of that. In fact, you never even heard a curse word. Like, watch LL Cool J, like, and you know, and don't act like we didn't have gangsters, like my man Spoonie G, like Cool G Rap. Come on, man, stop playing. Everybody know the gods. Because we were the influence of our generation. Our big brothers influenced us. We were the influence of our peer group generation, man.
Baby boomers.
And our generation are the founders of hip hop. Don't play. It didn't matter what music it was, man. You know, the gods would, I want to thank you, Allah, shining your light on me. We would take every song and be able to interface our culture on top of that song, man. So when you think about releasing part 3, Chuck, I don't know, Chris. I don't even know, because that's why I came at you when you came out with that song that you said was dedicated. I didn't like it. You tried to define this, but you know what I'm saying? And then another thing, I remember when your DJ got murdered, to me, almost like, if I'm wrong, correct me, but that was the first murder that I ever heard of in hip hop, is when Chris lost Scott LaRock, right? And I was like,